Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. This is Tuesday, March the 1st, 2016. First part of Citizens Forum is always the Walt and Jack Show. So, you know, Walt, I feel like I'm at a loss about where to go from here. You know, it's been just a crazy week in the world, it seems. There's really important issues happening left, right, and center. I mean, our community, our society seems to be under attack almost, and I think it's an internal attack from the corporations that I think run the country. And I'm not, I mean, we're always fighting these different, like I've got, you know, they're written down here, the climate change thing that's coming up in Vancouver in a week or so, the homeless camp, the high house prices, Site C, GMOs, Fukushima, refugees, the wars that are all over the place, the poverty, the pollution. And it's, I mean, I think I wish we had organizations that were focusing not on the symptoms, but to get to the heart of the matter. And I think the heart of the matter is we need a free press and we need more democracy. And I could be wrong, but I really think that if we had the free press, so the stories were being told in a different way, and if we had more democracy so that what people wanted actually meant anything in this great country of ours, then we'd start to move ahead. Because I think most people, like for example, don't want their children to die because of climate change or the ongoing massive pollution of the planet. They don't want that. But nobody ever asks us. The corporations that run the show just keep moving ahead, doing what they want, and we pay the price. So I think and Bernie Sanders is showing it in the United States, that if you bring some of these messages forward, at least a message of more democracy and economic equality, there's a huge number of people out there who just want to hear that. It's in Canada too, but we have where's the leadership? And we have to be it, all of us.
Yeah, okay, you know, just to touch on the idea, I mean, in order to have a healthy democracy, I think you need access to information, to information, all the information around any particular issue. You know, the environmental protection side, the argument for development for economic reasons, a well-rounded sort of set of information that you can analyze. That's always important. I think the media plays a big role in that. Getting further back, you know, when I first came to Victoria, I went to university for a couple of years. I really found out there was nothing there for me. I had an illusion. I thought that, okay, I'm going to go to university. I'm going to get some expertise in some area. And after a couple of years, I realized this is really a waste of time for me. So there's an information system that's called, you know, it's an educational system. It's a university that couldn't provide to me the sort of information I was seeking on the issues that I was interested in. And so there's a deficiency there at the university level for what they're teaching, obviously. You can say the same about public schools and so many other institutions that provide information to the public. All are ailing. All have suffered under a corporate agenda, in my opinion, too. That it's a prevailing ideology that we're dealing with. But I think we can fight through it. I really think people are fundamentally searching for the truth and are willing to take the extra steps and work to find out the truth of the matter. So I'm hopeful that we can do that. Now, Bernie Sanders is a good example. I think today is Super Tuesday.
Today is Super Tuesday.
So as we sit, we're going to really find out probably who's going to be the next president of the United States. You know, whoever wins these primaries, and we'll really be set up to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a very exciting race.
Bernie Sanders is a great breath of fresh air, and I think on the other side you have Donald Trump, was the breath of something, but I don't know what it is.
Well, to a lot of people, he is a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people really like what he says.
Well, then
And
there's
those are good people. You know?
well, okay. I'm going to differ with you. I think that really is a he represents a lot of bad things, in my view. Ignorance, racism, xenophobia. He's jingoistic, sexist, and you can add all your own adjectives because for me, he represents something that's really fortunate that that type of a character could rise up and really be a contender for as a president of the United States.
It's a sad state of affairs in the United States.
Yeah, and that could be a reaction to Bernie Sanders trying to steal the populist vote a bit, but it's really a low-level thinking type process when you look at Donald Trump. There's not much going on there. Bernie's offering some fundamental change, and he's really talking about the truth of the issue around the economic imbalances in the United States and the who holds the power, Wall Street, and all that. He's telling the truth. I think that's very, very important. And I just end up by saying I think he won't win this primary. I don't think he'll win, be the next president. But I think that in the next election, he's created a social movement that I think they can't stop, and that's what's so important. Somebody's going to come along and pick up where Bernie leaves off, and keep demanding democracy, and I think it can happen.
Yeah, his popularity shows that there is a huge thirst and a yearning for somebody who is putting forward that message.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are seeing that. Some of them very honest and some of them not so honest. And everybody will, sort of make their move. The entire system is so corrupt. I mean, in Canada as well, I was talking to somebody just before we came here about climate change, and there's this climate change conference in Vancouver very soon. I don't even know when. I mean, it's not big news, even though it's basically the future of the planet that's at stake here, I think. And what this fellow said was, why doesn't Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, just get on television and tell people what the scientists are saying? Because then, I mean, it is a very, very scary scenario. It's not a scenario where we should be about to spend $100 million on a new interchange at Mackenzie. We've got to immediately refocus everything away from the insanity of what we're doing and start to move towards a simpler, less consumption-oriented society. And the car has to be number one to be reduced and disappear. It just has to be. So public transit is the way to go. And we've got the Bank of Canada that can fund the public transit we need, but nobody will even talk about that. I mean, I would love Justin Trudeau to just make YouTube videos or get a couple of minutes on the CBC every once in a while and start talking to us about the important issues, because it's like he's disappeared. They've done some good things, but we need so much right now. And I would love to hear from him, not via the media and the media editing and choosing what's going to be said. I'd like Trudeau to start to talk to us directly, and because of the technology, he can do it. And I really wish he would.
I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it's going to happen in the CBC because it's dominated by Harper appointees right now. And the CBC, if you watch the CBC News, it really leaves you wanting. You really know there's a lot more to these stories than what they're saying. And it's what they don't say about a story that's important in my view. And I think the Harper regime still runs the CBC, and I think it's a huge problem for us because it's a Canadian broadcaster. It's supposed to be our broadcaster. The rest of the corporate news, there's no surprises. We're not going to come to expect anything other than what we've always gotten, but hopefully the CBC can turn around. I also think the Supreme Court is heavily weighted towards a very conservative agenda due to the appointees, the Harper appointees. It's more subtle, perhaps, but some major decisions could be made that may not be entirely in the favor of the public and the people at this time due to this very conservative Supreme Court. These things don't get shaken off easily governments come and go, but some of these appointments last for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do we begin? And it's to talk about beginning now at this, but I think we've got to. I mean, difficult times are ahead. That's for sure. Big change. So I think the way the country can weather big change is to have an honest democratic government that really represents the public and the public interest. And I think there is a public interest that most of us could agree with. The problem is that it's the 1% of the 1% have more than 50% of the votes, it seems. They have so much power, this small group of extremely powerful and wealthy families. We don't even know who they are. And a lot of them aren't Canadian, because if you look at the group that I think really rules Canada, they just changed their name. They were the Canadian Council of Chief Executives. They just changed their name to something else. I mean, half of them are just the big American and European and Asian corporations, right? It's this massive power structure in the middle of us that we don't even know about. They basically own all the big media in the country, they're members, and they control the politicians as well. So, I mean, to me I mean, it would be nice to have a group that is focusing right on that point of the pyramid. The whole system is corrupt, it's not democratic, we don't have a free press, we have a small group of corporations that rules everything. What are we going to do?
Yeah, in the relationship between corporations and public relations firms and governments, and I've looked at that over the last 3 or 4 years, and this is where we're not hearing about the influence. I had an impression that a public relations firm is sort of people you go to if you got a problem with your image or something, and they do an advertising campaign. But what I found when I started looking into it was that public relations firms are the corporate elite. You don't have to draw a distinction between their interests or what they do or say. They are the corporate elite, and they are the arm of the elite that's used to send information to the public. Now, a lot of that is sent to us through our own governments. And when these massive omnibus bills are written, they're written by public relations firms. They just come and plunk it on the desk and say, okay, Stephen Harper, these are your marching orders. This stuff doesn't appear out of nowhere. Somebody writes it. So the influence is so powerful. And we're not seeing that as a public. We don't realize that the same public relations firms are running all the political parties.
That's a very important point.
So the message is there. We'll leave them unnamed for today, but the message is that the same corporations, the same public relations firms are giving every party their marching orders. In the last federal election, the play was perfect, how that panned out. Of course, we saw what happened in BC here and in Alberta. We saw the corporate elite get what they want with the NDP government in Alberta. I think they got what they wanted with Trudeau, really, because sitting in the wings is the Conservative Party that hardly lost any support from the previous election. They only lost, I think, 250,000 votes.
Well, but that's their way of looking at it, and you're right.
Yeah.
From now on, I'm more interested in what's our way of looking at it. What is the public's way of looking at it? What do we want? Don't we want to have a voice? I think we do. Shouldn't our governments at all levels be coming to us and doing polling on it, and then telling us what the polls are saying, and then acting on the basis of the polls? But plus, you've got to throw in information, honest information and education, so people have a grasp of what the issues are.
Elizabeth May has a great idea, and not her idea, but something she does participate a lot in her town hall meetings.
Yes. And
I really think that's such a great way to go. Meet with people on a regular basis, see what the heck's on their minds. Things get hashed out in those meetings and get formulated. And even the person that comes with an idea of a concern could have it shifted just by the interaction with the people in the hall. I think that's the sort of level that we got to work at as individuals meeting and speaking and trying to formulate our ideas. And with the mass media and large media, we're not really given that opportunity. We're basically just given a line every day in the newspaper or on the news, and we're left all on our own to try to figure out where the BS is coming from.
Okay, so let's say that that begins to happen, and I think it should. So basically, Elizabeth May has just town hall meetings on an ongoing basis, maybe once a month or more, and she just meets with voters, and I guess they talk about issues, question and answer. I've never been to one.
Yeah.
So let's say we begin to formulate a consensus on some issues. The next step is that doesn't matter because the power structure has no interest in what we have to say. So let's say, for example, Site C. Let's say the majority of people in BC don't want Site C. They don't care. You know, the corporations don't care, the politicians don't care, the media doesn't care. And so, and they never talk about it. I mean, Site C is like a non-issue. It's only like $10 billion, a huge, just a vicious bullying assault by the provincial government on the people of this province.
And on the people of Peace River.
And people of the Peace River, they're getting hammered.
And that power is going, it's not going to consumers. It's not going to lighten up our burden. It's to ship power off to mining interests in the north, which is mines that we don't need. And cutting the tops off of mountains, mining is, like we saw in the Imperial Mines disasters, what we get from this type of production. But I think the answer is in participation. I think it's kind of a kicking and screaming thing. We're going to have to get in there and fight for everything we get.
Well, that's it.
That's the way
We're going to
is.
have to get in there and fight for everything we get. And I think more and more people have got to start fighting harder and harder, even though so many already are.
Yeah.
But maybe we have to really focus on the fundamental issues, which are we don't have a free press, and I think everybody has to know that. And just the story you get, that we all get told, that I used to believe, I believed it my whole life until not that many years ago. The story that we are always told is simply the corporate story. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the truth. It's just the story they want to put out. Television, newspaper, radio, the movies, the books, whatever they control. And just people have to keep that in mind at all times, which would be a big step forward if we all did.
You can't quite paint it with a whole brush. I mean, I was reading over the Natal Kurodi case, this poor couple that have been framed by the RCMP, in my opinion. And the evidence, if you actually read the Vancouver Sun and read those articles, they're quite well done. The case is quite laid out quite well. That looks like they were framed. Really, it does, and it just based upon the facts. But I have to say, in my opinion, after every time I say that. But the thing is, so you can get onto a story and you can get some pretty good facts. You just have to know when you're not getting them, when you're being sold a bill of goods, and when the coverage, for instance, of the sewage treatment system here in Victoria. Why are we in such a muddle here? Is because the media has kept us in a muddle, have not said the plain facts of the case here. And if we knew that, in an ongoing basis, it wasn't for some of the guests that come on this show, I think the public would be in total confusion.
Well, even with the guests that are coming on the show, I'm in total confusion. I have no idea what's going on right now with it, and yet there's a big faction that wants to make a decision literally almost tomorrow.
Yeah, just an aside, I was in contact with Mayor Helps about some of the issues around that, and especially with this deadline. Why are they not asking for an extension in the deadline? Her reply was, through email, was that they won't ask for an extension for a deadline to the deadline until they have something solid to present to the government. But the problem is they only have 3 or 4 weeks. They have these brand new ideas. it's going to be impossible for them to come up with something solid in 3 or 4 weeks. So she's now got us into a catch-22 situation where there's no way out of this. They're not going to make the deadline. So what are they going to do? Or are they going to try to desperately recommend some proposal over something else and desperately hope that it's going to fly? It's not going to work. The public are going to reject it. So they've gotten themselves into a pretty bad scrape, I think.
And worse, they've gotten us into a pretty bad scrape. You know, it's unfortunate. That's on the city level. What we see, happening on the provincial and national and international level. I just think we've got to start to do better. I'm not sure why we can't. I'm sure that we can do better than this.
Well, we can't let them away with it. That's the thing, is that we got to put politicians' feet to the fire. When these contradictions come up the way they are right now.
But I'd say more important than putting their feet to the fire is taking away some of their power.
Yeah.
I mean, so we've got to rewrite the rules. We need a democratic revolution. That's what we need, a democratic revolution in Canada. And
well, the problems we're seeing with this is, of course, the CRD is an organization that's untouchable because they're not elected.
And we're out of time.
There you go. Every week I'm going to say that.
Thank you all. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. It's March 1st, 2016. I'd like to start by thanking the volunteer crew and Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. Our guest in this segment is Mazen Al-Nahawi, and we're going to be starting a series of reports on the John Nuttall and Amanda Korody case, which was the supposed bombing of the BC legislature in the summer of 2013. And the main man on this series is going to be Mazen. So,
as
what's
you know,
happening?
Jack, thanks, Jack, again for having me on the show. As you know, I am a Palestinian Syrian, and I have already enough on my plate when it comes on what's happening in the Eastern Mediterranean. But I live in this town since 2005, almost 11 years. And when we first heard about this case of John Nuttall and Amanda Korody, I was hoping somebody get to the bottom of this story, because it's not happening anywhere far away from us. It's happening in our own town. And I hope somebody, a journalist or whether human rights group who defend people on disability, or human rights group who defend people on with drug addiction, and even a human rights group who defend women's rights, to jump on the story, because as I'm going to mention later, there is many issue. It's make us really upset to have this issue happening in Victoria. The whole issue started. We start to know about it in Canada Day, July 1st in 2013. And it's about two individuals who are supposed to be influenced by the Al-Qaeda ideology, and they are self-radicalized, as the RCMP said, who planted with a sport bag some pressure cookings bomb on a legislation building. More we know about the story, more we know that these people were in an urgent need for help for other kind of issue. But we find out in the end that there is an operation started in the 23rd of February called Project Souvenir, with 241 RCMP officers working on Amanda and John to end up, after 4 months in July, having them as a Muslim terrorist. Now, in the first, we have the timeline of the story by the Canadian press. And the first, as I said, in February 23rd, we have this picture here for John, where, as you see, he is kind of not looking that good, but this is his first interaction with the RCMP undercover officer. A week after, or
So
9.
this picture was from February 2013.
Yes, okay. And here actually the primary agent in the Project Souvenir posed as an Arab businessman. And as the Canadian press say, makes contact with Nuttall, they reportedly lock eyes. They lock their eye, reportedly. The Canadian press continue to say that 2 days later, the officer approached Nuttall with a request to help him to look for his niece. Nuttall allegedly reveals to him the same day that he wishes to wage holy war on behalf of Islam. Now, the second picture we have, and the second point in the timeline, we have here this picture here, and it's really very hurtful for somebody coming from the region I came in. See this scarf here, we call it Palestinian, we call it kufi. See the clothes the woman clothing they gave to Amanda. I'm really upset, and I should not be, because we should be objective here, reporting on an issue. But how the use of a symbol for farmers, workers, and even resistant fighters in the Eastern Mediterranean become now a symbol for terrorism. Just to emphasize, my major is a criticism in literature and theater. Messages like that is intended to be sure have something in the mind of Canadian people. So from now on, whenever you see that scarf or kufiya, it's a symbol of terrorism. And how the woman, and when I mentioned the woman rights issue, look how Amanda Cronin is in the back with that cover on her head. To crush that woman, bring her down here in Canada, just to end up in the end having certain agenda or certain goal in the end achieved. This is show you no respect to women's, no respect even for religion in this case, because many of the things they talk about Islam here, it's fabricated, it's not about Islam, but in the end, the end outcome is this is what is Islam. It's terrorist religion. I have no religious background. I mean, I grew up in a Muslim culture. I know very well what is Islam. But myself, I am an atheist, and I say it all that I have no religion. If you replace the word Islam with the word Judaism or Christianity, it becomes so appalling to talk about that. But now it's become so easy to bring Islam and in any issue, and it's just about terrorism. As a linguistic also, the word jihadi, it's really disgusting. Why they don't, these journalists, translate that word to English and give us why they keep using these Arabic words to keep it very alien to Canadian audience. Jihadi does not mean any sense. It's from jihad, which is a struggle or to do good for whether for you or for your people. And as I mentioned before in many shows, I have many friends, their name is Jihad.
So it's a name as well.
It's a name, and it's a name for a man and even for a woman.
Well, there's been a many-year-long campaign in Canada to create an enemy, and the enemy is Muslims. It's been a campaign, and this Corroding Nuttall case, I think, is one small part of it. A huge amount of energy went into creating what I think was a fake bombing masterminded by the RCMP. I mean, that's what I think. So,
and I before just to go far, there is one, I know we always run out of time. So this time I want to read something. It's very important, and I'm glad. I got in touch with some, for example, Professor McQueen from Hamilton. He sent me a very important note, and it was, we heard about it in the news lately when the lawyer of Nuttall question about if they have a kind of change of mind, of they want spiritual advice. So Professor McQueen sent me this, I'm going to read it. Each of us may have our moment of special anger as we read the records of this case. Many moments came when I read about Nuttall having an awakening of consciousness in the weeks before the planting of the bombs. He said that, Nuttall. Until a couple days ago, I did not clue in that people were going to die. I have never killed anybody. I am not a murderer. And at another point, Nuttall says clearly that he needs spiritual guidance or consulting. He said, I want to know in my heart that I did the right things. I need some spiritual guidance. The RCMP more honestly kind of disagree to discourage these signs of awakening of consciousness. He replies, what's this spiritual guidance going to give you? Nuttall says, that is about my soul we are talking about, my wife's soul. The officer responds, all of us, intones the custom RCMP officer, we have our own destiny. Allah chooses it for us. We don't choose this. Choose it
this
for
was an
ourselves.
RCMP officer was saying this?
This is what, and the note, this is very important note from Professor McQueen. It seems to me that these passages reveal the essence of entrapment. A citizen shows a clear sign of being ready to back away from a crime, but the police, instead of encouraging his tendency, work to beguile, seduce, and trap the citizen into the commission of a crime.
And this is before the courts right now.
Yes.
And you never hear anything about it, but the judge is going to decide if it was entrapment.
Yes, because there is another agency involved here, and that what is not mentioned in the timeline. John Nuttall, in the beginning of 2012, he asked his landlord to have a meeting between him and CSIS to tell them about some concerning things he saw in a mosque.
Right.
So between 2012, the beginning, until February 2013, when CSIS tipped the RCMP about John Nuttall, how come a guy who reportedly wanted to report something to CSIS end up the guy who is wanna do the crime?
And what did he want to report to CSIS?
He saw some suspicious activity inside one of the mosques.
And who was doing the suspicious activity?
The CSIS, they said they were human resources, and we have no idea what is that. This is the beginning of the story. We are starting. We are going to file a freedom of access for a request for information from all the department involved in this case, and we want to find out how much money they spend on these two individuals to be sure in the end that they become a radical Muslim, instead of taking them and taking care of their mental illness, because they are on disability assistant living. They are vulnerable couple. They are used to be addicted to heroin.
It's a terrible thing,
and now
what's happened. And the story is not getting out, but we're going to do our best to put it out.
Get to the bottom of that.
Mazen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. This is March 1st, 2016. Our guest in this segment is Brian Gilbert. We're going to be talking about sewage treatment in Victoria. And Brian, I have absolutely no idea of what's going on, so maybe you can fill us in on, because it's a very important moment in time. Big decisions are about to be made.
Big decisions have been made, and they're being made as we speak. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 2nd, there will be an emergency meeting. And then by the time your audience starts to see this segment, on March 9th is when the major decisions are going to be made at the core area. And yes, it's a $1 billion decision. It's actually not getting complicated, but when you look at the long-term costs, it's a multiple $1 billion decision, and it's an environmental decision.
Now, I think one of your main things has been all along that it can be done for a lot less than multiple billions of dollars, and that's a very important point.
Right. As far as the right plan concept is a completely 100% tertiary. which is now standard. That's their base case. And smaller decentralized sites. Basically build on top of the infrastructure like the outfalls we have and save money, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's validated by a world leader in wastewater technology who mentioned, as we mentioned before, we call it the $250 million option. It is a viable option that's worth exploring. If they can do it, other vendors can do it.
So you're saying there is a $250 million option that would allow us to build multiple plants and get tertiary treatment, so a high level of treatment. Okay, so I guess my question is
why didn't that happen?
Yeah, why
okay. Well, things don't really flow in a nice, progressive, logical way, unfortunately, when it comes to multiple players at the table. And it also comes down to, acceptance and understanding of that possible technology. It also comes down to the engineering people you hire to ask questions of, without any disrespect. But when you ask traditional secondary treatment wastewater engineers how to build this, you get answers that are secondary traditional wastewater engineering solutions. What does that mean? Secondary treatment, as I've mentioned before here, means you have to have a deep ocean outfall. And when you have to build a new deep ocean outfall, it makes sense to build it in a central location. When you clean the water up really clean and it's safe to human contact, then you don't need to have a deep ocean outfall and you can start to build your plants somewhere else. So being not used to that type of technology, that type of solution, we got the answer that we hired in some respects. And it's no real fault in some respects. You think about all of North America, they've had secondary treatment for decades now, so it's the standard. We have a clean slate. We don't have much. We have our treatment that works right now, but it's a clean slate. So we're in a unique situation. We need experts that think in terms of future innovation. That's who that we should be hiring, and that's who I hope we will get.
Well, actually, Vic Derman told me many times that was his hope from the very beginning of this process so many years ago. It's a very simple hope. Just let us see what's the best stuff out there that can be used, and then we can talk about it. And yet, time after time after time, those attempts were, I would say, blocked somehow. Just such a simple ask as, let's see what's available. And we seem to be in exactly that same position at this moment in time. You're saying there's better options out there.
And we should really come back to, Jack, you've got some great questions, and I think our time to really drill into what went wrong is another couple weeks out, or maybe months, because really what the people of the region need to understand right now is what's happened in the last 2 weeks at the core area, and it's not an easy thing to follow. They've heard in the newspaper about this drive back to McLaughlin. McLaughlin's back on the table. Well, that was put forward by Oak Bay Mayor Niels Jensen with disrespect, honest disrespect to Esquimalt. Didn't even ask a simple question, like Esquimalt has rejected a single site, McLaughlin. That's clear. That went to the committee, and the first attempt was to actually block even having that vote. That failed, the tie vote, 8 in favor of continuing or not. Colin Plant led that revolt in a sense of, let's not even talk about it. It violates our charter. Anyways, it went through, and Colin Plant saw, well, if it's going ahead anyways, I want to build consensus. So he proposed, and it passed, 14-4, I think was the vote, a combination, new option set that didn't get into the papers, and people should pay attention. It was Macaulay or McLaughlin as a combination, and a site, Clover Point. In other words, east side, treat your own, and west side, treat your own. Fill in the blank. It makes not only perfect sense from being responsible for looking after our own, fill in the blank, but you cut out all those big pipes that they've been talking about building. That's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, when you say big pipes, the Rock Bay option, all of the Rock Bay options involve building a pipeline from Clover Point along Dallas Road to Cook, and then up Cook all the way to Bay Street,
Yep.
and then
And
over
across.
to Rock Bay. Now
And back again.
And back again, right, two. So the impact on Cook Street, because I understand these are pipes are going to be under everything else.
Horrible.
The impact on Cook Street is going, and Cook Street is very, very heavily traveled. So the impact on all the surrounding, for what? Why are they even considering? And people don't even know.
No, so if that stays on the table March 9th, I can see a real strong revolt from that whole area because they're not yet aware of it. But I don't think Rock Bay's got any real potential. It's too expensive. It's got that $250 million cost. And that's why the pushback to McLaughlin happened. But now, by making it actually an and Clover Point, you only have to do half the treatment at McLaughlin. Probably not even half, because the West Shore will be putting in their facility as well. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in savings here. And so even if the two plants cost a little bit more than one would have, the money saved is going to be well worth it.
So let's say that plan is followed. So what amount
Cross your
of money
fingers.
are you talking about?
Sorry, amount of money?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, the $250 million was one part. The land costs at Rock Bay were very high. There was also remediation costs at Rock Bay. And even if they went back to the Jensen's motion, the McLaughlin idea, that had hundreds of millions of dollars of building a tunnel, tearing up all of Dallas Road, all the archaeological sites that you're going to hit, tearing up Clover Point still, you still have all the disruption there, and building tunnel under the inner harbor across an earthquake fault line to carry all the east side sewage. So I just ask you, what are they thinking? You just have the big one happen, that tunnel ruptures. Where's it going to go? Pretty picture? No, it's not. So the McLaughlin plan was always a bad plan for many reasons. That's just one of them. And that's why we blocked that as a single secondary treatment regional site. That's just one of many reasons.
What should people be
What should they be looking
thinking,
for?
knowing, and looking for at this point in time?
They should be looking for their politicians to act sensible, think cost effective, think environmental beneficial, and ask the West Side, where would you like to have your plant? Be respectful. I mean, gosh, it's not hard. And on the East Side, let's look after our own. So Clover Point's a good site. There was a company called Nappet. They came forward in December, January. $170 million. They could do all of the East Side at Clover Point. The architectural drawings, you should see them. If someone writes to me with email, I'll gladly share the link. You can find it on the CRD too if you search. Beautiful. It looked, you couldn't even tell it was there. It was underground, and you had this playing field on top, just like you see it now. It would be so easy and so beautiful that you could actually get a washroom down there, or maybe a restaurant. Good stuff.
I actually asked somebody from the city of Victoria about that, or the CRD, and was told it's not even being considered.
They took the Nappet proposal off because two secondary treatment experts, people used to traditional stuff, weren't used to the innovation. And they said the risk is too high. Well, I have to ask you, how expensive do they see that risk? Was it worth $250 million in conveyance costs? It couldn't be. So they didn't give us any cost estimate on the risk. And it's not their decision on risk assessment anyways. It's the decision makers that assess risk. The experts should say, here's the risk, here's what we think it might be worth, what the risks are, you decide.
So is there any chance that that plant at
It
Clover
should come
Point
back,
is...
absolutely, for consideration, yes, by innovative experts. People that think outside the box.
But we're very close, and I mean, you said, how can people even be aware? If I didn't get to talk to you and one or two other people every once, I'd have no idea what's going on. You just don't hear it.
It is complicated, and I want to just speak out to the people that are coming on and starting to help out. They think it's really complicated, and if you don't start, just get started. You can reach out to me and ask questions. I'll gladly help anyone find the source of information. Give them some background that they can check out for themselves. But get started. Just follow along. It does take time and effort, but this is such an important decision for our region.
I live in Victoria. How are my city councillors who are on the CRD doing on this issue from your perspective of a progressive solution?
Well, if it goes to Cook Street and Rock Bay, you better get in touch with all your city councillors and really complain, because it impacts Victoria. It costs us $80 million. I think the city, our Victoria City, $80 million in avoidable costs. So, so far, if they come back on March 9th and actually say, yes, let's really give a good look to Clover Point and something on the West Shore, good. If not, if they continue to be obstructionist on that, then we need to hold them to account on that. I'd like to see flexibility. I like to see them move in a positive direction. And maybe it's just as they learn and get the information from experts, they may adjust their position more. I've seen adjustment in position in Saanich Council members. I was surprised with that.
Brian, we're out of time, so we're going to have
Thank you
to
very
leave it
much.
there.
Sorry.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know. It's so big, so important, and who knows. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. Our guest in this segment of Citizens Forum is Dermot Travis. Dermot is with Integrity BC, and we're going to be talking, to start with at least, about BC Hydro. So, Dermot, take it away.
Well, I think it's something that all the viewers tonight are going to have heard about is the recent proposal by Bill Bennett to defer the hydro bills of 6 major mining companies for up to 5 years.
No, actually, I barely heard about that myself. It didn't get a lot of play.
Well,
It should.
it should, and it shouldn't be an economic policy that quite clearly was written on the back of a napkin. And what he's done is that these 6 mining companies that have contributed more than $1 million, I might add, to the BC Liberal Party, have 13 mines in the province of BC. They're all going to be entitled to apply for deferral. Basically, they will not have to pay their hydro bills for up to 2 years. They will be put off. There will be an interest rate charged. There's no guarantee that the mine's still going to exist at the end of this whole exercise. It's all predicated on the fact that various mineral prices are at a low right now. There's no element in the plan as to what will happen if the price hasn't risen in that 2-year period. But what's most shocking, and this is what really impacts on viewers, is the fact that just recently, Jessa McDonald, the new CEO of BC Hydro, announced on a Friday, no less, a Friday afternoon, that BC Hydro would be applying for a 1-year interim rate increase of 4%, which is going to add about $4 per month to an average BC Hydro bill. Now, what's important about that is not the 4%, because that was already factored into the previously announced 28% increase over 5 years. What's critical about it, enjoying this, aren't you? What's critical about this is the fact that she was supposed to apply for a 3-year increase and apply to the BC Utilities Commission. And instead of applying for a 3-year increase, she's asked for just a 1-year increase. Why? She admitted it herself, because they now have to factor in what the cost of Bill Bennett's 5-year deferral program is going to be on BC Hydro. So we have the minister responsible for BC Hydro announcing major economic incentive programs to 6 corporations that are very generous backers of the BC Liberal Party, including the fact that one of those companies had Andrew Wilkinson as a paid lobbyist before he entered politics, who's now the Minister of Advanced Education. And nobody has any idea how much it's actually going to cost. And that ultimately, based on what Jessa McDonald said, the impact is not going to be on the mining industry. The impact of that plan is going to be on every ratepayer in British Columbia.
Can you just tell me again what Bennett gave them? A
5-year plan,
right?
where they can defer their hydro bills. These are all major hydro customers.
Completely defer.
Completely defer for 2 years.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
This has been a 5-year plan, but for 2 years.
well, they can choose when they might want to defer. Keep in mind, this is all written on the back of a napkin.
Okay.
Jessa McDonald proved that on Friday when she
Right.
shifted.
So you mean
plans.
they can choose 2 of the 5 years?
They could choose 2 of the 5 years. For all we know, Bill Bennett could wake up one morning and decide, no, it's for the 5 years altogether, and Jessica will
not?
have to redo it.
Why not? So they get a year's free hydro.
They get 2 years free
2 years
hydro.
free
Free hydro in the sense that they don't have to pay it right
now.
away.
Yeah. How about the rest of us?
The rest of us always have to pay it. But what's interesting is that you normally give incentives to companies that you believe might actually be able to pay. Tech Resources is one of the companies. Its bonds have been downgraded. Thompson Creek Metals is based in Colorado, and Deutsche Bank thinks Thompson Creek Metals is on its end game.
Actually, Deutsche Bank may be on its end game.
Well, that's possible as well. But one of the other companies has just had its bond rating dropped to junk. These companies are not in good financial shape. He's offering a program that BC Hydro has, as they very clearly stated, no idea what it's going to cost, what the impact is going to be on you and me, who don't get to defer our hydro bills, and we have no idea what Bill Bennett could come up with tomorrow. Now, to put some additional context, Hydro-Quebec, in the last 6-7 years, has raised its rates on residential consumers cumulatively by about 15%. It reported a net income last month for the year 2015 of $3.1 billion. About 2/3 of that will go to the government of Quebec as a dividend to support social programs and other initiatives. In the same period of time, BC Hydro's cumulative rate increase has been 63%. And the dividend that BC Hydro pays the BC government, BC Hydro has to borrow the money to pay the money back to the BC
So
government.
where's all our money going?
Heard of Site C?
Yeah, okay, that's where money is going to be going, unless it
no
can be
money's
stopped.
going now.
Oh yeah, okay.
Loads of money's
How
going now.
about the independent power producers?
Also going to them. You know, you're looking, I actually did an estimate that going back to 2010 and all the way until those contracts expire, they will cost BC Hydro $72 billion. Now, an argument can be made that there's a place for independent power producers, green energy.
It's not green energy. It's not.
I used independent power producers.
Yeah.
I didn't use run-of-river programs, okay?
Okay, yeah.
So windmills fit into that. A number of different types of technology can fit into that. Independent power producers, an argument can be made that we want to invest in that and that we are prepared to pay more per kilowatt than you might pay on a hydro project that's already built and in place. They haven't done that argument. They've done the argument that we're going to sign 25, 30-year contracts with companies that, as you pointed out a moment ago, are not necessarily all green and are in fact controlling our water resources in order to make that money. Again, all major contributors to the BC Liberal Party. And when I say a major contributor to the BC Liberal Party, everyone should also infer from that that they're not giving any money to any other political party in BC.
I saw a number very recently that said we're now paying over $1 billion a year to independent power producers. Would that sound about right?
I would put it closer to 2.
So we are paying, I mean, it's amazing that we never hear this, that because none of it was by accident. This was the plan from the beginning. They built these hugely expensive run-of-river projects, and BC Hydro tied us, with the provincial government, the Liberal government, just tied us into decades of contracts with them for power that we don't need, and all done in complete secrecy because the media never told anybody. So you said the number is $70 billion
$72 billion.
that we're on the hook for.
Yep. And
Hello.
well, one of the things that's important, and goes back to that green energy thing, is that the Canadian Wind Power Association has packed up their bags and left BC.
No wind?
They're heading to Alberta and Saskatchewan, where there's an actual government interest in developing green energy.
And we should mention that Site C and hydroelectric is not really green energy. the amount of methane given off from these reservoirs is very impactful on the greenhouse gas problem we have. And in the case of Site C, the flooding of, in all dams, the flooding of the natural land to create a man-made lake for our benefit is...
Well, put all the environmental, social issues aside for a moment. I think the one area on Site C that the government has failed miserably at, and they've failed at it because there's actually no basis for it, is the economic argument. They have not been able to put forward to the public a credible economic argument that this makes good sense for British Columbia. And the proof of that is the fact that they won't send it to the BC Utilities Commission for proper public hearing. Bill Bennett, when he was Premier under the Social Credit Party, didn't have any fears of the BC Utilities Commission. He wasn't a coward. He sent the same proposal to the BC Utilities Commission. And the BC Utilities Commission said this makes no sense. And Bill Bennett said, thank you. That was that. Project over.
So, and yet now it's moving ahead.
Now it's moving ahead. No BC Utilities Commission. And what you heard this week from Bill Bennett is what Adrian Dix has called chasing customers. They're building a massive hydroelectric project that will have potential environmental, social consequences, and economic consequences for us, that they realize they have no customers for. And why do we know that? Because they're going to be applying to Ottawa for infrastructure money to build a transmission line from the Peace, not to the southern parts of British Columbia, but to Alberta, because they want to try to start selling power to Alberta. Well, one would normally have the client lined up before you start undertaking new projects, such as Site C. And they're doing it, fill in the blank, backwards.
And we are the ones who just watch the craziness go on.
Well,
all of us.
I think that people in British Columbia have to get themselves far more engaged in not just the popular protest issues that are happening in the province, but into the day-to-day grind of how government operates. Because I think it'll be an eye-opening experience for them. I think it'll shock them. And I think it will go a long way to improving voter turnout, because people will have a better sense of the type of government that they want, because they will have seen how government operates today and will be more engaged to go out and mark an X on a ballot.
Dermot, I agree 100%. Thank you very much for this look at what's going on in this province, and thank you all for watching this week's Citizens Forum.